seed. I mean, maybe a 5 seed. I haven't looked at bracketology lately. We have a lot of these games sometimes during the course of the year, usually in November and December, neutral court games. Duke over the years has played a lot of neutral court games. By the way, Stanford Steve at 11 and then Mitch Tishler at 12. I did not spit that out. I meant to. And Stanford Steve will talk more college hoops and some other things as well, like quarterbacks in the draft and other players in the draft, which we are now, 2 months away, just a little bit more than 2 months away. I'm not, as a Maryland fan, I'm not really happy about Michigan and Duke playing in the DMV. In what will be Saturday night, one of, if not the game of the year in the regular season. Duke's done this a lot over the years, Max. When Coach K was coach, they played a lot of February non-conference showdown games. Good for them. And often they would target arenas for a neutral site environment and where the NCAA tournament was going to be played, typically a regional this year. The East Regional is at Capital One Arena. That means the 2 Sweet 16 games will be Friday night. I forget, it's late March. And then the Sunday will be the Elite Eight game. We had the regional back here in 2019 in Michigan State, Duke. Zion Williamson, that game was off the charts. Great. Michigan State won that game. Incredible game that particular day. But Duke's done that over the years. They've targeted Madison Square Garden, Capital One. They played a game against Georgetown one year where I think the Capital One may have been a first and second round site. And Duke's always expecting to be a very high seed. And sometimes the highest seeded team, when they're an East Coast team, gets placed in the Eastern Regional and the closest to where they are. So they've done that before. Good for them. And certainly they can draw big on a neutral floor. Duke is, they're the Stones. I mean, they're rock stars. I mean, they can tour, essentially. Michigan and Duke both, by the way, have a significant, number of alums in the DMV. I think a lot of you probably know that. It's not, my guess is, I know that we've done this before and I've looked it up, but off the top of my memory, Maryland's 1 in terms of alums in the DMV. George Mason's 2. I think Virginia Tech's 3 and Penn State is 4. See if you can look that up real quickly, Max. Alum bases by size in the DMV, in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Maryland and Mason, I'm pretty sure, are 1-2. And then I think Virginia Tech's 3 and Penn State's 4, but Michigan's up there. Michigan's up there, and Duke is a much smaller, school, so it may not be up there in volume, but, a lot of Duke kids that are in school in Durham are Northeast kids. It's not like Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill, the University of North Carolina, is a lot of in-state North Carolina high school students. In fact, it's, almost a given that if you're a really good student in North Carolina, you can get into Chapel Hill. It's kind of like what Georgia does in Athens. If you're a really strong high school student, and not even super strong, but there's a way to get in. Maryland doesn't have that. Maryland's hard to get into for in-state students, man. Very difficult to get into. They want that out-of-state revenue more often than not. But I digress. The Duke alum base in D.C. is big. I would imagine it's probably biggest in New York in terms of where their alums live. I bet you New York's 1, maybe D.C.'s 2, Boston, L.A., San Francisco, Chicago are probably all for them because those kids aren't from North Carolina in most cases. Michigan's got a ton of alums in the D.C. market. So this game is a sellout, and this game is going to be, quite the atmosphere. As a Maryland fan, and I think for you Georgetown fans, you shouldn't like this. I mean, that's Georgetown's home floor. Like if Michigan and Duke were playing at Xfinity Center, that'd be completely off limits to me. Maryland would never let that happen. Now, this is not Georgetown's home arena owned by the school or the state or whatever. It's owned by Ted. It's owned by monumental, and they can book whatever the hell they want to book. Unless Georgetown has something in their contract with them that says you can't book neutral site games unless we're involved. Georgetown's played Duke. I know I've been to a Georgetown Duke game at Capital One. Maryland hasn't played anybody but Georgetown at Capital One in many years. There was a stretch there. They played a Kansas team there. It was Paul Pierce. Kansas was ranked 2 in the country. Maryland was like 8. And it was an unbelievable environment. Maryland played that game. It was a neutral floor game. But that was also part of that that charity tournament that Junior was that Feinstein was involved in. BB&T, it was always whatever bank was sponsoring it. That was part of that, I'm pretty sure. Maryland played UConn at Capital One, I think more than once. I think they played UMass with Calipari when he was coaching them at Cap One. But, man, if I'm Georgetown, I don't like that Michigan and Duke are playing in my arena in the biggest game of the college basketball season. It's great for fans of the sport, and it's a hard ticket to get. Be mostly Michigan and Duke people. There'll be a lot of people that aren't Michigan and Duke people, though. But it kind of minimizes the DMV college basketball scene to a certain degree. That may be defensive on my part. It may be my Maryland insecurity coming out. I'll concede that. And look, it's a bad season for us, and there's a little bit of sensitivity to what's going on in the sport. The sport right now is flying high. There are big-time games and big-time players going at it every night. Last night's Alabama-Arkansas game, double overtime. Tuscaloosa, Alabama 117, Arkansas 115. Arkansas's Darius Acuff Jr., true freshman, projected top 10-ish, if not top 8, 7-ish, 6'3" guard, went off for 49 points and had a chance for a triple overtime tie shot, game-tying shot that would have given him 51. Acuff Jr., by the way, another guy that when we get to June, depending on where the Wizards pick, he's going to be one of those guys. Unbelievable freshman in the country right now, everywhere you look. But the games have been incredible. I mean, DeBonsa went from BYU, went head-to-head at Arizona last night. He had 35 and 7 at Arizona. And then there's the story, of course, of Darren Peterson. I'm telling you, man, this is a major developing college basketball / NBA draft story. Darren Peterson, for my money, is the most talented player that will be in the 2026 NBA draft. He doesn't like to play basketball. There's no other way to, well, there are other ways to view it because there are other possibilities that we may not know. He may have a mental health issue. He may legitimately have some sort of stomach issue that continues to pull him from games. Last night he had 20 in the first half against Oklahoma State and then told his coach, Bill Self, that he couldn't play in the second half for cramps. He's played now, I think, in 12 of their 26 games. He told his coach 5 minutes before tip a week ago Saturday against the number 1 team in the country, Arizona, that he couldn't play because of flu symptoms. Max, Darren Peterson has got to be looked into. You cannot just blindly say he's the best player, which he might be, the most talented player, which I think he is, and just take him when there is a possibility based on his actions that he just doesn't like basketball, that he's load managing at the college level. What will that mean at the pro level, for crying out loud? How do you not get up and how are you not fired up to overcome the sniffles to play against Arizona, who's number 1 in the country, coming into your building? There's something lacking there. Now, again, there's always the possibility there is a legitimate medical problem. So all of the medical due diligence is going to have to be done. I mean, this guy's going to get worked over. If you're going to, if he's a possibility for you, you are going to have a team of doctors to make sure that there's not legitimately some underlying issue. You're going to have to absolutely go down that, path of trying to find out if there's a mental health issue. He's 18 years old. He's a kid. It's very possible that he's healthy. He's just getting terrible advice. Well, is that terrible advice going to continue when he becomes an NBA player? I mean, this guy is taking big money, millions of dollars, to essentially check himself out of games and into games whenever he feels like it. They won last night, and his 20 in the first half were pretty exciting to watch. Just didn't really feel like playing the second half, apparently. The sport's incredible this year. This tournament's going to be insane. I hate that Maryland's not going to be in it. Georgetown lost again last night. They're not going to be in it. George Mason now has gone, into the dumper the last couple of weeks. They're probably not going to be in it. We're not going to have one local team in the tournament, are we? What's AU doing in the Patriot League? What's Dwayne Simpkins doing? He was in it last year. He got into that 16 versus 16 first-round game and, remember, lost his best player in the first half of that game. Dwayne can coach, man. I hope AU's doing well. I'm not following the Patriot League. But, obviously only the tournament winner goes, so it really doesn't matter where he is currently if they can get on a roll.
Fourth in the Patriot League, sitting at 15-13. Navy is 22-6 at the top.
Navy's 14-1, 22-6. So, you never know in these mid-majors and the lower mid-majors. Get an upset here or there. Maybe we get AU into the tournament. I guess somebody recently told me GW's playing better. So maybe GW gets on a roll and gets into the – but there is a very, very good possibility that we're not going to have a local team in the NCAA tournament. And what is going to be an NCAA tournament with major league team, coach, and young star power when we get to March. This is actually going to be a really good tournament. Personally, out of all the teams I've seen this year, Michigan's the best team. I think they're the best team. But, Duke's really good. Houston's really good. Arizona's slipped up a couple times. UConn lost a game last night. I still love Matt Painter and Purdue. We'll see what they can do. They got to the final 2 years ago. Last year's final was what? Florida-Houston? That was a good final. We had a really good final last year. College hoops is Illinois surging right now. They're a team that's interesting. Florida is good again. They'll have a chance to defend their title. Pitino's St. John's team's pretty good. Miami of Ohio is 25-0. No, they're not going to win the national championship or go to the Final Four. I was actually watching Joey Brackets on with Scott the other night, and Scott asked him the question, if they lose a regular season game, are they going to have to win their conference tournament to get in? That's where we are now in mid-majors. I mean, you could have a 25-1 or a 28-1 Miami team lose in its conference tournament and not get in. That's not going to happen, I don't think. They're 26-0, I guess, now. They won the other night against UMass. Anyway, Duke, Michigan, Saturday night. We'll have somebody on the show tomorrow. I texted back and forth. Hopefully we'll get Jay Billis on the show because College Game Day is going to kick off the day. They're going to have it at Capital One. The last time College Game Day was in town, 2020, about 2 weeks before COVID shut the world down, Maryland had Michigan State in their building, top 10 matchup, and Game Day was there. And it was a scene. But it's going to be a scene without any local team playing. Seems weird. I would say that it would impact recruiting, but I don't even know if recruiting's really the story anymore. Recruiting's about money. You got to be able to pay. The duel in the district. Who knew? Because I don't think it's been promoted very well from my standpoint. But I'll be tuning in and maybe going, but probably not. All right, what Jaden Daniels said about Philadelphia Eagles fans next. So I'm not going to lie, I haven't watched a lot of the Winter Olympics. My wife's watched some of it. She was watching the skating the other night. And then I ended up watching some skiing afterwards. I forget what it was. Um, but last night, in just kind of flipping around on the channel, I actually hit on Michaela Schifrin's slalom run right before it happened because they do this thing. Apparently, it's called the Big Event, and it airs, I think, at 10 o'clock Eastern on the Olympics. And clearly, this is a tape delayed thing. I didn't know what the result was. I was kind of out of it yesterday. I had something going on, but uh, I watched this. Michaela Schifrin, who is, a many-time Olympic gold medal winner, and she won the women's slalom, winning, by the way, by 1.5 seconds, which I guess is, one of the biggest disparities, one of the biggest routes in like the last 30 years in skiing events at the Olympics, any skiing event. She was terrific. But afterwards, and I did not know the backstory, but there was an interview that I watched with Kara Banks on NBC, and she was really incredibly thoughtful and eloquent in discussing why this meant so much. She lost her father about 6 years ago. He died in 2020, and this is her first real Olympics, I guess, without him, or her first gold medal without him. And she talked about it. And then afterwards, I watched her on the podium, and I wanted to play just about a minute and a half of it because I thought it was very moving. I thought it was incredibly eloquent in the way she sort of communicated how she's dealt with the sorrow of her father passing. Here's what she said.
This was a moment I have dreamed about. I've also been very scared of this moment. Everything in life that you do after you lose someone you love is like a new experience. It's like being born again. And I still have so many moments where I resist this. I don't want to be in life without my dad. And maybe today was the first time that I could actually accept this, like reality. And instead of thinking I would be going in this moment without him, to take the moment to be silent with him. Sometimes I've also been resentful of the people who talk about feeling this person like, oh, they're here with me and they're carrying me through this day. And I'm like, where? Like sorry. Why do you get to feel that? And I, like, why can't it just be easier? Today, there's like, maybe I just get to talk to him, and maybe he doesn't have to specifically answer, which is hard, but it's okay.
I mean, wow. She's 30 years old. She had not won a medal in 8 years at the Olympics. And just the part that really got me was how she described how she has sort of feared this moment of participating, of competing, of potentially winning and not having him there with her. And then she figured out that she could be silent and be with him after her race. And to have all of that, going around, swirling around, and she ends up not only winning, she wins by a second and a half, which is the biggest disparity in terms of first and second in a skiing event in, I think, 28 years to be exact. It's really, I thought, her way of communicating how she's been dealing with and sort of processing the sorrow and sadness as a world-class athlete of the loss of her father was really, wow. Well done by her and somebody that I don't know that much about. I'm not a big Winter Olympics person. Of course, I know her name, and I know that she's been a very successful skier. I didn't know about the 8-year absence. I didn't know about the father until last night watching her, but an impressive young woman who really expressed something that, a lot of people go through, but the way she, I think, described it was how she processed that sorrow and that sadness was really impressive. All right, let's talk about Jaden Daniels. Easy move to he likes Eagles fans. So Jaden Daniels was in an interview last week during Super Bowl week, right? This is with a Sports Illustrated interviewer. I don't know her name, but it was during Super Bowl week. You're going to hear the question because I think the context is important and adds something to this. Because if you've seen the headlines, it's just, Jaden Daniels praises Eagles fans. Jaden Daniels loves Eagles fans. There is some context around it. So you'll hear the question and then you'll hear Jaden's answer. This was Super Bowl week, him doing, kind of the radio row or the press row interviews. He had some stuff to promote. And this is how this part of the conversation went down.
Eagles fans are the most obnoxious in sports.
That's the only fans I know. I love Eagles fans.
You do? Why do you love them?
I mean, they just embody what Philly brings. And be able to go out there and play against them, it's kind of just that thing. And like their environment is kind of like the closest thing you could get to a college environment.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay.
Yeah.
Do they kind of give you more fuel?
Yeah, for sure. If you go out there, you could beat Philly, and Philly is a different type. But their fans bring it, man. Especially, as we're rivals with them in the NFC in the East. So I love playing against them.
So let me just add to the context because I didn't do a good enough job setting it up. It was kind of a yes-no segment of the interview. Yes, no. Eagles fans are the most obnoxious in the NFL. And that's where he, answered the question. I love Eagles fans. I love Eagles fans. They just embody what Philadelphia brings. To be able to go out there and play against them, their environment is kind of like the closest thing you can get to a college environment. If you go out there, you can beat Philly in Philly. That's a different type. Their fans bring it. So let me just say, on the surface, I don't have any problem with what he said, but I think he missed one opportunity. And when I say I don't have a problem with it, of course, I'm not thrilled that Jaden Daniels is praising Eagles fans. But the statement itself and the context, I understand what he was saying. And by the way, he's not wrong. The Eagles fan base is a really passionate fan base, as we all know as sports fans, football fans, NFC East, compatriots. We know that the Philadelphia sports fan, the Philadelphia Eagles fan, is a different breed. And he played in the number one college football environment in the country. There is very little that compares to Death Valley at night. LSU, Baton Rouge at night, Tiger Stadium. I've been in that stadium for LSU, Alabama. It's easily a top 5 sporting event I have ever attended and one of the loudest, most raucous and electric environments I've ever been in. And everybody says that about it. It is unbelievable, the environment he got to play in. And by the way, not to mention some of the SEC road games he got to play in. Playing at Bama, playing in the swamp against Florida, playing in some of these incredible environments in college football. And there's very little in just the NFL game that resembles the best in college when it comes to environment. I think Seattle's 12s, man, we got a lot of 12s talk after that Super Bowl, didn't we? The Seattle 12s are phenomenal, and it is a little bit collegiate. But he hasn't played in that kind of an environment at Northwest Field in Landover, all due respect, because he probably played in the best year we've had 2024 in about a quarter century in terms of true, passion. That Atlanta Sunday night game was in a great environment, but it's not LSU at night. It's not Philly. And I know the Link isn't what the Vet was, just like, FedEx isn't what RFK was. It's different, but Philadelphia is different than Dallas, Washington, or even the Meadowlands. It just is. It's a better environment. It's a more partisan environment. You have so many stadiums, and it may have started with our team because we sucked so bad and people were checking out and the fan base was basically getting chased away by the owner over a 20 plus year period. And I'm not saying that our stadium was the first to get taken over by opposing fans, because that's probably not true. You'll come up with a couple of others. But, man, we had it more often than anybody did for a long period of time. And by the way, Jaden played in a couple of those games, even in 2024, where there were a lot of opposing fans. Some of those sellouts in 2024 were courtesy of the opposing fans. I understand it wasn't as tilted as it was in previous years, and that's good. And hopefully that'll continue, and eventually get to that new stadium, or maybe even in the last, several years of this stadium, it'll be, 90-10, 80-20, rather than 60-40 or 70-30 or 50-50. But he's not wrong about Eagles fans. He's not wrong about that environment. He hasn't played in Seattle yet. Being, close to a college environment, he played in the best there is. Here's the nit that I would pick on his answer. And that is, and again, he hasn't been here long enough. This is something that this would have been, a level of savviness that, would have been a little bit beyond his level of experience, in my opinion. I'm a big fan, so I'm going to, defend him to a certain degree, but I do think it's his inexperience that probably led to the following not popping into his mind to say. And what he should have said, in addition to, Eagles fans are awesome. It's an unbelievable environment in Philly when you play there as an opposing team. It's the closest thing to a college environment. But, man, I love our fan base. Our fan base is awesome. And the games in 2024 that we had, we got an incredible fan base ourselves. Now, that wasn't the context of the question. The question was yes, no. Are Philly fans the most obnoxious in the league? By the way, the answer to that is yes. That's the only thing missing from the answer. That's my small nit to pick. And I think the lack of sort of experience and being a part of it and, being a little bit older and having gone through a lot of these things and probably having been bitten by one of these answers in the past. But he didn't know that question was coming. There was nobody there to prepare him for that question that was coming, more likely than not. If he had been super, super quick on his feet, he would have, praised his own fan base at the same time saying, man, that environment's incredible to play in. It's quite, the road game for us. It's it's close to a college environment, but man, we've got great fans too. And, when people come to our place, it was really tough in 2024, and it's going to continue to get tougher, hopefully, as the years go on. So, on a scale of, did you have a problem with this or not have a problem with this? And that's the question at 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Did you have a problem with what Jaden said, or didn't you have a problem? And you can, add to whatever your answer is. It doesn't have to be black and white. There can be some gray in there. For me, I guess there's a tinge of gray. I just think he should have praised our own fans. But I'm not blaming him for not doing it. It's kind of a, he got caught in an answer or in a question he didn't know was coming. 301-230-0980. For me, I don't have a problem with his answer. But I gave you my reasons why. 301-230-0980. Your answer next.
Eagles fans are the most obnoxious in sports.
That's the only fans I know. I love Eagles fans. I
You
love
do?
Eagles
Why
fans.
do you love them?
I mean, they just embody what Philly brings, and be able to go out there and play against them. It's kind of just that thing, and like their environment is kind of like the closest thing you could get to a college environment.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay,
Yeah.
do they kind of give you more fuel?
Yeah, for sure. If you go out there, you could beat Philly, and Philly is a different type. But their fans bring it, man. They especially as we're rivals with them in the NFC in the East. So I love playing against them.
Do you have a problem with Jaden's answer to that question? It was a yes/no part of the interview. Yes or no? Eagles fans are the most obnoxious in sports. And he praised Eagles fans and said it was as close to a college environment as any other. For me, I don't have a problem with what he said. But again, a little bit of, additional information like praising his own fans as part of that answer, I think would have been savvy and would have lessened the impact of this for some. I think it's an inexperienced young guy caught off guard with the question. And by the way, answering it truthfully, because there is some truth to the Philadelphia environment at Lincoln Financial being one of the best in the NFL and probably resembling more than certainly Northwest Field. No offense to all of you that are regulars in Landover. It's not the environment that, Death Valley at night is. I mean, it's not even close to it. There's really nothing, maybe other than Seattle or Green Bay. I don't know. At this point, we've seen so many NFL stadiums become so much different in makeup on Sunday afternoons, Sunday nights, etc., with so many opposing fans. It seems like a lot of fans prefer to go to road games than they do home games, which has been, a more recent phenomenon. But do you have a problem with what he said? Yes or no? Why or why not? Max, did you have a problem with it?
No, I didn't really have a problem with it at all. I mean, I do see and understand your sentiment about him kind of being able to, he could have given a little bit of props to the fan base here, but at the same time, it's not a very impressive home environment, the one we got going right now. So I completely understand kind of his answer, and he's right. Philly fans are the closest you're going to get to a college environment in the NFL. I mean, they're just, they're insane. And now it's not what it was 30 years ago around here either. So we can't keep acting like it is. So I feel like this is a good opportunity for the fan base to take an honest look in the mirror and reflect at how they can do better inside of the walls of Northwest Stadium.
301-230-0980. Do you have a problem with what Jaden Daniels said? Yes or no? Why or why not? We'll start with Sabah. Sabah, go ahead.
Hello, hey, can Sabah. I quickly chime in about the Duke thing first, and then I'll get to Jaden? Or am I not allowed?
Go ahead.
Okay, so Duke does this all the time. They're so fake. They only play really good teams at neutral sites, and they try to get credit for having a good schedule. Carolina's the only one that goes to goes to Kansas, goes to Kentucky, or goes to Michigan State, or goes to UCLA. Duke will only play if it's home or, quote, neutral, where they know a lot of their fans are. It's so fake.
You know what I just realized about you and I, Sabah? Yeah. We have one thing in common. We both hate Duke.
We hate Duke.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Answer the Jaden question.
It's not easy to get into Carolina. Some valedictorians.
I know it isn't. I know it isn't.
Don't get in. So I'm just letting you know. All right.
I know.
So next, Jaden. Yes. Jaden, it doesn't bother me one bit, because with these guys nowadays, there's no loyalty. He may be on Philadelphia Eagles at some point in his career. He knows that. He's not going to burn any bridges. He's not a dummy. So that doesn't bother me a bit. And he's right. I mean, I don't go to the games anymore ever since we lost our identity. And so I'm sure the fans that are going there now may not be as passionate, or they're the opposing team's fans. And we got to give him something to cheer about anyway. But I'm not bothered one bit. I ain't bothered about him talking about bringing in his buddy Ayuk and doing anything that a GM is supposed to do. I don't like that. I don't like that he is having any input on coaching staffs or players. I don't think that's right. He is a player like everybody else on the team is. He should have just as much say or just as little say as anybody else on the team. So that's my thoughts there.
Yeah, that's not the reality of today's sports. I doubt that he has had any real say on what Quinn did. I'm sure they talked about it, and Quinn said they talked about it, but Quinn said very clearly
He's talking
the
about
decision
Ayuk.
was
He's
was
talking about
his.
Ayuk now. I don't like that.
But in terms of Ayuk, I don't necessarily think they would kowtow to his desire. And by the way, that may not be his desire. That may just be a public face on trying to let his friend know that he still cares, but maybe he thinks his friend's nuts and wouldn't want to play with him either. It's hard to get a read. As far as him, not burning any bridges, I don't think that had anything to do with it. This isn't a Bryce Harper situation. There's no, unrestricted free agency when there are franchise tags, et cetera. And I would be very surprised if this player isn't locked up for a long time in DC after the 2027 season. But thank you, Sabah. Let's go to Skip. Skip, problem? Yes or no with what Jaden Daniels said, praising Eagles fans?
Absolutely no problem at all. But first, I'd like to say I am so glad that Drake May did not win the Super Bowl or the MVP, because we would not have heard the end of it from Sabah. And other people would have been saying he's the number one guy from that class. But now that he fell on his face, we don't have to deal with that. So,
the irony is I had a similar sentiment going into the postseason, but in that game, I really wanted him to play well because I had New England for size, and
right,
lost
I do
that
know
bet.
that.
With that, and that's what I end up rooting for more often than not. But look, he had an absolute abysmal postseason, so I think a lot of those conversations have been shelved for the moment anyway. Skip, but go ahead.
I'm so glad
Jaden Daniels, you don't have a problem
MVP.
with it. What else?
Yes, I don't have a problem with it because the Commanders fans are not all that yet. We have not developed it. In fact, you said the fan base, you documented this, Kevin. The fan base does not like the name, as Sabah expressed very, very eloquently as she does. And so one thing, you always talk about former Redskins being Redskins. Well, the guy you like the most is not a Redskin. Jaden Daniels is a Commander, and he's the face of the franchise. So that contradiction, we have an ambivalent fan base now. So I give him a pass on that because he's the one who could bring the fans to the level or possibly close to the level that it used to be. But we haven't had that, Kevin, for what, 25, 30 years? That level of fandom?
It hasn't been that long. There were certainly moments. 2012 was a special season. Let's not try to act like we didn't all think, oh my God, we are back in a major way. So it hasn't been 25 years. There have been moments here and there. The Joe Gibbs return. Now that's now 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. Yeah. No, look, 2/3 of the fan base got chased away by the owner. They're fighting to get those people back, and they've gotten a lot of them back. Not all of them, clearly. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Brand attachment, emotional attachment, that has a lot to do with it. But as far as like this specific event, he's asked a yes/no question, and he was just being super honest. I think if there was a little bit of more, a bit more of experience and maybe even savviness, he would have mentioned, but our fan base is really good too. Whether he believes it's Philly's fan base or not is irrelevant. You don't want the headline to be Jaden loves Eagles fans and said nothing about his own fans. And so he could have, reduced the impact to some. Didn't impact me in a major way, but I think it impacted some. Thanks, Skip. Let's go to AJ in Arlington. Problem with what Jaden Daniels said, praising the Eagles fan base, or no problem with it, AJ?
I got no problem with it at all. I think it was a very authentic answer. I think we are harping on experience and maybe it's just coming from like the PR side of you in a sense, but it was an authentic answer. At the end of the day, you played at Arizona State, you played at LSU, Death Valley, one of the greatest sports venues in the world. And now you come into Northwest Stadium where it's about a 60-40 and that's in favor of the visiting team. It's going to be different. And also some players in all of sports, just their blood just boils a bit differently when they're playing against these opposing teams at their stadium versus at home. So like me, I'm familiar. I actually used to represent a former Eagles quarterback, so I had been to many of those games and seen how players have been treated or whatever, like being able to trash talk back to those fans and win in their own stadium is a different type of feeling that these players get. So, I mean, I just feel like if Washington Commanders just show consistency as a team and being a contender, that's when the fans will rally. I don't think it matters about the name. I mean, 2024, did anyone really care about the name that much when they're one game away from the Super Bowl?
Yes,
no,
they did, actually.
And the whole city.
they did, and they do.
Of course.
But we all got caught up in the moment, no doubt. But it's certainly a major underlying.
But going into 2025, the spirit was at the highest level of them returning back to possibly being in a conference championship game. So I just think you're not really going to get that allure from the fans until they move into this new stadium at the old RFK.
Yeah, and by that we're 5. That's another 5 years from now, and the younger group that cares less about it might be targeted and acquired, and there's a lot that'll transpire over the next 4 years that might prove you right. But there's a lot from a business standpoint that, trust me, it is still an issue, and it's an issue they're wrestling with every day out there. Thanks, AJ. Bobby, problem with it or not a problem with Jaden's comments about Eagles fans?
Hey, Kevin, I don't have a problem with it. And he might have been taking a subtle shot at our fan base, and I hope he was.
I don't think he was doing that. I thought about that for a moment. Listen to the tone. I don't think that's it at all. I think it's a totally kind of authentic, in the moment, answer.
Well, Kevin, you know me. I did that trip for 20 years, faithful. Our fan base is horrible up there, okay? I sat in game after game after game after game. And it was outnumbered by big numbers, okay? It was horrible. So we don't have a home field advantage, Kevin, okay? Even in 24, they've sold out every game, but a lot of those fans were the opposing team. And I know that's somewhat of the norm now in the NFL, but Eagles have got a good home field advantage. Green Bay has got a home field advantage. Seattle's got a home field advantage. I mean, our fan base is not good. All they're going to do is moan and groan about the price of a hot dog or how much it costs to park. That's their MO.
Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Arrowhead, Philly, Lambeau, Seattle.
Kevin,
did I miss any that we'd all consider no-brainer, great fan bases, great home environments? Minnesota's pretty good. Minnesota's pretty good.
What they have in common, though, they're winning franchises, okay? We've been a pathetic organization for 25 years, except for 24, okay? You got to win, and hopefully the fans will come back and support the team, Kevin, okay? And that name is still out there, brother. That's a problem. It's a problem.
Well, we know that. We know that.
Yeah, I know that. But anyway, I don't have a problem at all what he's saying, okay? He was just speaking facts. Philly's got a good fan base.
It's anytime somebody says it's not a problem, the answer I should just give is go check out their social media every single time there's something about brand or anything related to the possible answer of it, and see how many views and how many responses those get to just, hey, we just signed a big free agent, or hey, we just won a game. It's like overwhelming in terms of the numbers. Trust me, they know what's going on out there. I just don't think that there's an easy answer, like I've said for a couple of years now. And 2024 gave them a path to the least amount of resistance in the moment. Hey, I've got Mitch Tishler coming on next. I'm going to ask Mitch about this. We can come back to this after we're done with Mitch, because there are a lot of you on hold that want to weigh in. If you're busy, I understand, but we'll try to get back to it at around 11:25, 11:30 on what you thought about Jaden Daniels' comments about Eagles fans. Mitch Tishler from Monumental next. Not a bad college basketball season. I wish my team were a participant in it. By the way, last night, Andre Mills, 39 points, tying a Maryland freshman record. Diamond Stone had 39 11 years ago when he was a freshman for the Terps. Andre Mills has really been playing well. He's a guy they got to have back next year. 39 on the road at Northwestern in a loss. Joining me right now is my friend Stanford Steve from Scott Van Pelt's Sports Center, and of course Stanford Steve on College Game Day, football style, not basketball, but College Game Day's in town Saturday for Michigan and Duke at Capital One Arena. You know, I talked about this game. First of all, I don't think it's been promoted very well here locally. Do you have a general feel for, like, this caught, I think, a lot of us by surprise. I didn't even realize it until about a week ago. I know it's sold out. I know tickets are hard to get. There just hasn't been a lot of discussion of this game in this town. Have you sensed that? You live here.
I have. I think it's the circles we run in, Kevin. I think Maryland people are tied up in a lot of other things. But no, Duke's done a good job. I think the last 2 years it's been New York City. They played Illinois last year there. It's done really well. Obviously, they've done this thing going to play in the big cities, alumni bases. But I wanted to ask you, Scott and I were talking last night, like, not drivable distance. Do you think Michigan has the biggest alumni base here that's not drivable distance?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Max, I don't know if you ended up looking up what I asked you to look up earlier, but I know that in terms of alum bases in the DMV, Maryland, George Mason, and I think Virginia Tech is third, and Penn State's there as well, but those are drivable distances. Correct. I mean, you could drive to Ann Arbor. It's about 8 or 9 hours or whatever it would be. But yes, I think, would it maybe be Notre Dame?
Yeah, probably. They're always the answer.
So
and Notre Dame's usually the answer in any northeastern market, but you're probably, it's a good guess. Tons of Michigan alum.
I think that's what I think it sets up, because in New York you're going to get your fans that are just going to go and root against Duke. While they do have a big fan base there, this one I think is going to be more pro Michigan for sure.
You know, I'm not. It's funny because I talked about this on the show, but I was also talking to Chris Nocky earlier today because I was curious as to what he thought. Nocky does the games with Johnny Holiday on radio, Maryland games for years, and I'm not fond of this. I've not talked to Scott about this. I don't think. Maybe you have. I'm not fond about Duke and Michigan being in the DMV on Saturday. And by the way, if I were a Georgetown fan, it's a bit minimizing. It's a bit emasculating because they're going to fill that building up where tickets on the aftermarket are going to be outrageously expensive. They're playing in my home arena if I'm a Georgetown fan. Now, it's not their on campus. They don't own it. They lease it out from Ted and Monumental. It's different. But my God, there's no, I mean, it would hurt a little bit. I don't like it as a Maryland fan that they're playing in the DMV. I want Maryland to be playing Duke. Not this year, by the way. I'd rather that be a different year. But, you know, Maryland's played some of those big non-conference games in January, February, certainly in December and in November. They haven't played a Cap One in a long time, unless they were playing Georgetown. But I don't know. Do you think that's too defensive, too insecure?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Because when they're talking about teams, you know, I'm looking at Miami of Ohio, Belmont, St. Louis, and I'm reading this year, you know, people are going over resumes this time of year, right? And who they beat and who they play out of conference and how many quad ones they win. The top tier teams don't want to play those teams because it's a no-win situation and you got to pay them. But I at least give credit to Michigan and Duke for saying, you know what, let's go play out of conference and let's show, you know, see each other what we got and play against, you know, a big-time program against big-time program. I like the idea. And Duke, I think, started doing it just because of how bad the ACC was the last couple of years and just trying to find something to get ready. So this one, I didn't think they saw Michigan being as good as they are. But I think it sets up for an awesome atmosphere. I still think that building is pretty good. I can't wait to see the renovations. It'll be my first time in the building for basketball season. So I'm fired up to be there Saturday for sure.
You know, Duke, if you go back through their history, they've actually played a lot of these. You've mentioned it, but they have targeted. I could be wrong about this, but I've had this sense over the last 2 decades, especially with K, and it would be the same with Shire. But they've looked at, where the regional sites are in the East, and they've tried to target playing a game. When the Gardens had the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. This year, Capital One's got the East Regional. They've got the Sweet 16 games, and they've got the Elite Eight. And they try to get a game in a location in which they might be playing in a month later. Smart. Now, this is a big heavyweight game and matchup. It's funny that Duke doesn't play a lot of these games as pure road games anymore. You don't see that a lot.
Yeah, that's a total Maryland point of view. I hear that plenty of times when I'm working at night.
Who do you like?
I think it's a bad matchup for Duke. I really do. I think Boozer is the player of the year in the sport for what he's done, but I look at him when he's played quality bigs and he's struggled. I look at the end of the Carolina game and he couldn't get the ball in the basket. Michigan, I think, is as well put together a team as there is. When you look at, especially what they did the other night, I mean, Kaysen and Cadeau, I mean, 2 point guards basically, and I think Braden Smith's an excellent player and gave them fits. They didn't turn them over a lot, but they scored on them and put pressure on Purdue, on the defensive end, which is not their strength. And I just look at the guards for Duke. Foster's a 4-year kid that hasn't gotten to the level I think some people thought he could get to. And Lil Boozer has been good, but he's still not at the caliber of those guys. And the thing, I keep going through it is this time of year, Duke's 208th in free throw shooting in the country.
Really?
That scares the heck out of me. Yeah. I started doing the numbers on all these top 10 teams. Illinois is the only team that I believe can win a national title that's in the top 10. They're 9th. Like Arizona and Michigan are 155th. Houston's 24th. UConn, 252nd. So that's the thing that I look at in March. I go back to, Scott and I were talking last night, Texas Tech is a team last year. If they make one front end of a 1-1 against Florida, they're going to the Final Four and possibly can win a national championship, not Florida. And they don't even
Houston would have beaten Texas Tech.
Yeah.
By the way, he's a guy I'd love to see win it. Can they win it? They can win it this year.
Houston?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you
agree with me that sometimes he's kind of left out of the great coach conversation a bit too much?
Yes. I thought last year did a lot, though, the way his guys battled back and beat Duke. But the problem was the lack of execution in that national championship game to not even get a shot off. But talking to guys that cover games and go like Big 12 games and call games, they think the world of them. There's a couple guys I know that put them at the top of the sport when you're talking about national championships. Now, head coaches.
Defensively, I don't know of anybody that's better than Kelvin Sampson.
Oh, I mean, just the other night when he talks about losing at Iowa State, I'm not disappointed in my effort. He says, our guys are going to play hard. He's like, I'm disappointed because we lost on a free throw blockout, and we practice free throw blockout.
Right.
Like you could see, he was irritated that the game came down to that, something that they work on more probably than anybody in the country, and that's what they lose on. So the style that his teams play with, what he asks of his guys and the way they respond, the story of Flemings, who I would take. I know it's hard after Acuff went for 49 last night, but Flemings never changed AAU teams, never changed high school, went to Houston, only took another visit to Texas Tech. Like, I just love what Kelvin does with these guys. And like I said, talking to guys that are there, shoot-arounds, going to practices, no one does it like Kelvin. And, I think this is a great opportunity because as good as a top tier of teams there are, you're not going to have to play them all, So, you wait to see what the bracket is, but I would take Houston style over almost anybody because I think they can muck it up against Michigan.
We're going to talk some NFL draft with Steve, just so everybody knows that. Something that he is intimately has a good feel for. But I just wanted to ask you, like, off the radar right now, give me a team that you think can make a Final Four run.
I mean, they have a bunch of losses, but they're still top in their league, and started season 5-4. I still think Florida and what they've done. I think Illinois is scary just because they have more scoring options than say a couple of years ago when they had Io DeSumo and they were a 1 seed and Loyola Chicago knocked them off. I don't like. I would say Pitino possibly, but that's the worst the Big East has been in my life. I grew up going to the Big East tournament. So
they're three. They're going to get 3. That's going to be it, right?
Yeah. Villanova, St. John's, and UConn.
Yeah.
The one, I only think one team can win it from the SEC, and that's Florida. The one team I think that's different than his most recent teams, and he's gone to the Sweet 16 a ton, but he can't get to the Final Four. I think since 2003 with TJ Ford at Texas. That's Rick Barnes at Tennessee. They got Jacoby Gillespie from Maryland, who's exactly what they need, a guard that could score. And they've run into instances. I mean, they played a rock fight against Houston last year, and it was a battle. They were right there. They just couldn't put the ball in the basket at the end. And this Ament kid from Virginia, I mean, no one talks about him when we're talking about Peterson and Boozer and DeBonce and Flemings and all these guys. Ament, I would put right there because of how skilled he is and what like the NBA, like how big he is and skilled. I see him walking in the NBA and scoring 15 to 20 a night. He's got that body and he's got that skill. So it's something Tennessee hasn't had, and I would be wary of where they are if they're in your bracket.
Yeah, I think you said Virginia. Nate Ament plays for Tennessee. By the way, what do you think of Virginia?
No, he's from Virginia.
Oh, from Virginia, yeah. What do you make of UVA?
I was asked this weekend. I think it's a top 5 job in the sport of what he's done with assembling a roster and getting it, putting the results on the court. Talking to people that are Virginia season ticket holders and fans and friends, like they couldn't get, like, it was January and they're like, I just can't believe how watchable we are. Like to just totally violate your roster, but bring in guys and bring in guys that put the ball in the basket. We know what Tony's style was. It was slow, it was methodical, it was the pack line defense. It was effective, but it was boring. And it cost him in the tournament a bunch of times before he won a national title. But Odom's brought in they were up 24-5 last night. I mean, I know Georgia Tech's not great, but I'm looking at teams go on the road now. Yeah, but I mean, you go on the road, you never know what you're going to get, and you come out. I love seeing that. They're dangerous for sure. Can they go to the Final Four? That's going to depend on the matchups. But they've been as good of a job and as good of a program in a turnaround spot this year that there is in the whole country.
At Stanford Steve 82 on X. So I've talked a lot over the last week and a half, 2 weeks about Darren Peterson. I think what happened against Arizona at home is a major due diligence investigation for anybody that's considering taking him number 1 overall. To miss that game for essentially flu-like symptoms, 5 minutes before tip, come on. Something's going on there. How would you view it if you were an NBA general manager and you've got number 1 overall, which is precisely what Will Dawkins may be faced with here in Washington?
Yeah, it just feels like the problem has moved down to the college level. Kevin, like, look at last night and you see he had 13 points before the first media timeout last night, right? You're on the road, you're at Stillwater, you're a big favorite, you're playing well. You're like, all right, we got this thing. Let's get it going. He takes a 3, 2.5 minutes into the second half, pulls himself out. You see self-exasperation pointing to the table of a kid that was going to come in for somebody else, but, basically yells, all right, get Darren instead. And you look at what he did last night, I think it was 23 and 18 minutes. And then John Calipari says that Acuff was in a walking boot for 2 days, and he goes out and scores 49 at Alabama.
Almost 51.
Right there.
Triple overtime.
Right there, my decision is made. Scott and I have been talking all year. Is Peterson, when we see it, it's great. Everyone that's seen him, that's the one I'm so caught off guard because all the high school recruiting, all the guys that do the AAU circuits, guys from here that coach that have seen, like, no, he's the guy. He's the guy. Talking about Peterson. And then you watch Flemings and you watch Acuff and you watch these guys For the Wizards, you're in this position. You got yourself in this position. You made moves to get in this position, and you're going to take a guy that you're not going to be able to show your fans every night. I find that hard to do. And I would take Flemings and Acuff instead. At least I know what I'm getting there. I don't want another headache. I've had enough headaches trying to deal with what I've dealt with for years. Give me something I can plug and play and the fans get excited about every night. And that's why I would lead towards Flemings or Acuff if they were fortunate.
Well, you're saying Flemings and Acuff as if they're 2 and 3. DeBonsa and Boozer have been a consensus 2 and 3 from the beginning. Are you saying that you'd take Kingston Flemings or Acuff before Boozer or DeBonsa at number 1 if you were going to pass on Peterson?
I'd take 4 guys. I'd take Ament before Boozer, and I would take DeBonsa before Boozer. I worry about him at the rim. I really do. When he plays against quality bigs, he doesn't get his shot off. The end of the Carolina game, he's got to be an absolute knockdown shooter. He's never going to do it, but another year in college to help his body and get better around the rim, I think is great. I don't think his left hand is great, and you need those things when you're going to play against guys bigger and you're a post guy. So I think that's really going to affect him at the next level, and that's all about getting your shots off at the rim at the NBA. There's a little bit of Tyler Hansbrough. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I just biased. I just want a guy that I'm going to plug and play every single night. Like I look at Acuff. If he's going to play like that every single night, like that, you don't think the fans will resonate to that? Like, hey, we got a guy now, that he's going to be out there. Is he the best shooter? No, but he's going to give you all you got for 48 minutes every night, and we could plug in and play him and get some excitement level. There's pieces around him that'll play off of him. But I just look at the want to, I think is what the Wizards need to inject some juice into this place. And that would be perfect for me because you're getting everything in one.
You're so right about Boozer. Like I first of all, he wouldn't have missed the game against Arizona. He's a badass competitive dude, which is the best part about him. But he's got a lot of what I thought Tyler Hansbrough had in college, which is the inability against bigger, longer players to finish anywhere near the rim. For Hansbrough, that was really, super short arms, if you remember. And with Boozer, we'll see. But I'm with you on Boozer. But what about DeBonsa? Don't you like DeBonsa? I mean, in terms of creating your own shot, he and Peterson, to me, maybe Acuff too, but those are the 3 on as far as being able to create your own and just get buckets.
No, DeBonsa is the most talented guy without a doubt. Like he's lived up to it in my opinion. His team's not great; they're not great defensively, and now with Saunders out, he's asked to do a lot more. I really can't wait to see what he does in the tournament when he gets away from having to play these top 5 Big 12 teams every night. Yeah. I think you're going to see a freedom that he brings to the table. But no, you're right. He makes things harder for himself, but that's what's going to happen. Like, I want to see that. Like, I want to see the guy have the ball in his hands and want to perform and have trust in himself. The skill level is totally there. I mean, he's had some stretches this year. I think he set the record last night for most points over, or most games over 20 points consecutively in the loss to Arizona. But no, I'm totally fine if he was in a Wizards uniform. Like I said, I'm just looking at the juice. A guy has the ball in his hands all the time and what we need. I'm not saying Iverson in Philadelphia, but just an Acuff every night in a Wizards uniform would be pretty special to me.
I think Peterson, because recency bias is a real thing in sports, even with, front office execs. Like, he could go on a tear over the next month and they could go to a Final Four and he could average 26 a game and have a buzzer beater or 2 and change the narrative on himself. But as we sit here today, you're 100% right. I mean, there are red flags all over this player, and it's too good of a draft. Like, he's not the only one. If you're in the top 2 or 3, or if you've got number 1 overall, there are options this year. Some years there aren't, and you just have to live with it and take it and take them and hope. But like you laid out, there are options this year. Stanford Steve from ESPN's Scott Van Pelt show and College Game Day joining us. So let's talk some football. What the situation is here. Washington's got number 7 overall. It's going to be a very active, I would guess, free agency period. They've got the 5th most cap space right now. It'll probably end up being 4th or 3rd most when they make some moves here, probably releasing Marshawn Lattimore, maybe somebody else. Tunsil's probably going to get extended. That might lower his cap number for the upcoming season. They're going to have a ton of cap space, a ton of firepower. First of all, have you thought about NFL free agency? Because you're, I know, very much into the draft, but in terms of free agency, have you thought about what Washington would be looking at and who you'd like to see them get?
I have not thought about the free agency.
That's fine.
I know. I was looking at it. I saw a couple price tags, like, would Alec Pierce be a fit, or stuff like that. But
yeah,
I've honed in. The problem with the draft, Kevin, and just jumping into it, is I think there's teams you don't know what they're going to do in front of you. Like Cleveland, New York. I don't understand why New York's going to go get a receiver. Everyone, like all the mocks I see having them take a receiver, but that's fine because I think the Commanders need defense.
So let's just play this game. If David Bailey, Reuben Bain, and Caleb Downs were all there and on the board at number 7, who would you take and why?
Oh, man, that's – I'd love to know the odds of all those 3 guys being there to help the
probably not great.
Bit,
the more and more I think about Bailey, and the more and more I think about his performance this year, and then watch and read, I don't think there's any chance Bailey's there at 7. There's a better chance that Bain is there and Downs are there. Don't you? Do you agree with that or not?
Yeah, no doubt. I look at Downs, and I've seen him play over 10 times in person. I've talked to Coach Saban about him a ton. He talks about him as high as any player he's ever coached, and it's just because of the football IQ. Like he wanted to play offense while he was at Alabama on top of playing defense. And Nick had to talk him off the ledge there. But when you bring to the table when I look at Washington, it just needs so many pieces. But when I look at Bain, he's a guy that you just put in and you're going to be fine. Can he play better against the run? Yeah, but I look at teams' game planning in that. You see what teams do in letting guys give a free run. You know what? Dude, we're not going to block him because he's so good, and we're just going to read off at him. He's going to get all of that. But as far as talking to people that, Jason Taylor talked about him and coaching in the Hall of Famer at Miami, I just love what I heard when he talked about he wants to be coached old school. He wants everyday, analysis of what he could do better. Not what he did well. How can he get better? And you saw his game evolutionize. The power, just the raw power he plays with, and not afraid to take on blocks. Teams trying to run counter at him. He's taking them on head on. And then just the brute strength. I thought he was an absolute man against Ohio State and really controlled that game. And you could tell Julian Sayin knew where he was every single snap and felt him every single snap. So I don't think it's a miss. Either guy, you are getting an exact player of what you need. You need a top-tier talent that's going to be a great leader in the locker room, and both those guys bring that to the table.
Who's got more of an upside when it comes to true game-wrecking edge, scare the hell out of an offensive coordinator the week before rusher, Bailey or Reese?
Oh, that's a great one. Bailey's a more refined rush.
Yeah.
Reese is just more of an athlete. Now, can he put his hand in the dirt and rush the passer and be great at it? Absolutely. Can he line up in space and cover a guy on a third down? For sure. But when you just want to talk about refined tools, I think Reese brings more to the table because of his size and speed. I think people are going to pick apart Bailey's size, but he's still effective as hell rushing the passer. But when you talk about a game changer and what Reese brings to the table, like I thought Patricia was the best thing he did in that defense, because I was there at practice the first week against Texas, and everybody's just pointing at Reese. He's like, just watch him tomorrow. And I'm like, all right, well, why didn't he play last year? Ohio State won the national championship. If you're that good, you're going to play. He, had some problems with Knowles' defense, with whether it was read and react or, being aligned right based on personnel and formations. And Patricia's just going to let him run and let him run free and more be a free runner. And boy, did he show out. The athletic ability is incredible. And I think defensive coordinators are good enough now. My favorite defensive coordinators are the ones that adapt to what they have. They don't bring guys and say, you're going to do this. It's more of, all right, what do we do well? And let's put our guys in the best position. So I look at Dan Quinn as always being a guy that's done that, no matter who the DC is, and install a plan. So I look at Reese as being a change. I'd be shocked if the Jets don't take him at 2.
Who's Carnell Tate's pro comp?
Ooh.
If nobody comes to mind, that's fine. But I've been trying to think of who I'd view him to. Like, is he Devontae Adams in best case?
I think he's going to run faster.
Okay.
But not. The best thing about him is versatility. I actually look at Ibuka, but I want to see the time. Like, again, I think he's going to run faster. Talk to guys that have coached him there. They absolutely love him. Like, this day and age of the diva receiver and I got to get mine and I don't get enough targets. Like, look at what he did. There's a third down being at Indiana, Ohio State 2 years ago where Indiana's up 7-0 on the road and Ohio State has a 3rd and 17. And Chip Kelly takes the ball, puts it in Will Howard's hand, and he goes right to Carnell Tate on a stick route. I think it was against Pons too. But what I love is that he just knows his role. He played against the best receiver in the sport. He played with Ibuka, who dominated at the highest level. And then this year he's playing against Jeremiah Smith. What do you want me to do? You want me to be a slot? You want me to line up X, Z, motion? Throw the short stuff, throw deep route. He's a great route runner. In and out of breaks, I think could be a little bit better, but he's got the ability to get better at that. You know what I mean? So he's not a one-trick pony. And his teammates and his coaches love him, which I love hearing about when you talk about wide receivers in a locker room. But as far as comp, I don't really have. Because there's not a lot of guys that are as versatile.
Right.
And I think playing with a transfer quarterback and you're the third receiver on a national championship team, you're going to take what you get. And then the next year he's with a young quarterback with the best receiver in the sport again. And the biggest thing, I don't think he was healthy at the end of the year. That Miami tape just shying away from contact. I wonder if he was 100%, but I can't wait to see what he runs in the 40 at Indy.
The best wide receiver in the sport Steve is referring to is Jeremiah Smith, who is certainly a top 2-3 selection in next year's draft. Carnell Tate, is the receiver we're talking about from Ohio State. Do you have him as your number 1 wide receiver? I'm asking about him because I've seen him mocked to Washington now 3 times. We've got so many mocks out there, and there is the thought that Washington needs to add another playmaker or 2, as desperate as they are on defense. But do you have Tate as the number 1 receiver in this draft?
It's hard. I want to see what they all run, Kevin, because you look at Jordan Tyson at Arizona State had brutal quarterback situations this year with Levitt not playing. And his durability is a big factor. I really like Denzel Boston at Washington.
I love Boston.
I think he brings everything.
Love the running back
table
at Washington too, Coleman.
Yes. Oh yeah, he runs hard as heck. Mekhi Lemon is an absolute baller.
Is he just a slot? Is he an inside guy or not?
Yeah, he has to be. But he catches everything. I really like Malachi. Now he's at the top, but like Malachi Fields at Notre Dame, I think will be a big time difference maker at the next level. And then you start getting your Omar Coopers and Surratt's. The kid Brazil at Tennessee has a lot of good, and the kid Chris Bell at Louisville, end of the year not healthy, but watch the Miami game. He's the best player on the field. He's got size and speed. So
what about the guy from A&M, Concepcion?
Concepcion? Yeah.
Is he a first-round guy? Is he first round?
He could be. I like Zachariah Branch better than him. from Georgia.
So good.
I think he's
Branch.
tremendous. I heard McShay call him Zay Flowers, which I thought was a great comp and could even take a level above Zay Flowers because of what Branch does in the return game. Now, that's the thing in the NFL is, your kick returns are all muted. That's not a factor. In punt return, it's not really a priority anymore. It's just give me the ball back. We just got to stop. But I have it between Tate and Boston. That's where I would do. And I got no problem with Jordan Tyson because his good is as good as anything. And he got himself better. Just looking at catching the football in traffic and contested catches. He's a man's man out there doing it. But it's going to come down to what they all run. So that's what it is. But there's plenty of guys that are going to come in and start right away. I mean, you go all the way down. I mean, Jeremy Bernard at Alabama is a dependable guy. I don't think he's going to run what these guys do, but he could be your third receiver for sure, maybe even two. So it's fascinating. They're all going to differentiate depending on what they run at the 40. And the problem is none of these guys, half the guys don't run anymore, and you wait till their pro day. So we'll see about that. But if you want to take the next level, there's going to be multiple guys going in the first round. You're going to come out and run, 4.4 or 4.3 or sub 4.4, and you're going to have yourself at the top of the tier.
All right. Last one. Appreciate the time as always. There are a lot of people. Kuiper's one of them. I think Jordan Reed at your place is one of them that basically say Jeremiah Love, if he's not the best player in this draft, he's certainly a top 2 or 3 player in the draft. Do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do. I think a lot of it complicates, or I should say a lot of it is enhanced, Kevin, because of the drop-off of that position after him. There's guys that are good, but when you look at what he brings to the table in all aspects, and you see how much more open the NFL game is, and we've talked about it, my favorite thing in the world is throwing the ball to the running backs and getting them in space. And you just look at Jahmyr Gibbs. What he's done and the role he had at Alabama, and then to see what he takes on at the Lions. So I think the drop off from after him, but yeah, I mean, the tape is as good as there is. He's a game breaker. He catches the ball. He's a tough runner. He doesn't go down on first contact, everything you want. It's just the value. Can you take him in the first round when you need so many pieces? That's why these GMs get paid the money. They have the weighted scales about positions, whether it's tackle and corner and quarterback and all that, and where the running back falls in. I will say, I feel like the running back, the valuableness of a running back has come back at the pro level. I think you've seen teams do well with a guy. I mean, the Super Bowl MVP was a running back, so it's good for that position. But yeah, Love is right there. I don't have a problem with anyone having him one on the top of their big board.
All right. Thank you for doing this as always. Enjoy Saturday night, the duel in the district. It's been labeled between Michigan and Duke.
Everything needs a name now, Kevin. You know that. Come on. You love that.
Needs a name.
You love naming everything.
I'll see you this weekend. So until then,
let's do it.
Thank you.
All right,
Stanford Steve, everybody. At Stanford Steve 82 on X. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
Eagles fans are the most obnoxious in sports.
That's the only fans I know. So I love Eagles fans. I
You
love
do?
Eagles
Why
fans.
do you love them?
I mean, they just embody what Philly brings, and be able to go out there and play against them. It's kind of just that thing, and like their environment is kind of like the closest thing you could get to a college environment.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay,
Yeah.
do they kind of give you more fuel?
Yeah, for sure. If you go out there, you could beat Philly, and Philly is a different type. But their fans bring it, man. They especially as we're rivals with them in the NFC in the East. So I love playing against them.
Jaden Daniels, during an interview where he was asked yes or no, are Philadelphia Eagles fans the most obnoxious in sports? This has created quite the stir. The question is simple. Do you have a problem with what he said or not? Why or why not? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I'll mention what I mentioned last hour, and that is I don't really have a problem with it. The only thing that I think, more experience, or maybe if he had been prepared for it, because he was clearly caught off guard by the question, is if he had added in, but our fans are great too. I mean, we've got phenomenal fans, and our stadium rocks when we've got a big game, and hopefully it'll continue to get better, something like that. Look, he's not lying. In terms of atmospheres in the NFL, Philly's one of the better atmospheres. Their fan base is super passionate and super, super caustic and, mean-spirited and the whole thing. I mean, there's an aspect to it I love. And he, played in Death Valley. I mean, we talked about this when guys like Chase Young and even Terry McLaurin and others got drafted. Like, they played in the Horseshoe in Columbus. You think that, it was such a letdown to play at FedEx Field or Northwest Field and walk into the stadium and see a stadium that was split 50-50, best case some Sunday afternoon. So anyway, 301-230-0980. G's been on hold for a while. G, do you have a problem with it? Yes or no? Why or why not?
I've been on hold because I'm on the clock, man. And, Stanford Steve, shout out Stanford Steve. Because I've been telling you about Darius Acuff even before he had 49 last night. Shorty is a dog, man. He is straight killer dog. And if I had the number one pick, I'm picking A.J. DeBonta because he's unguardable. I don't care what nobody say. But as far as this Eagle talk, man, I ain't got no problem with him. Anybody that got a problem with him, they would have been mad if he had been like G from the shop answering the question. He showed a lot of class. He was cool, calm, and collective on the spot. Like, he answered it pretty well, and I ain't mad at him because I look at it like a little tongue-in-cheek also, because when I was playing at St. Stephen's and we went on the road to Episcopal, who was our rival, I love giving them people buckets. I love talking trash to their student body, man.
That was quite the campus, wasn't it? Episcopal?
Oh, man.
It's like a college.
Shout out to my brother, Bryce. Man, I'm telling you, and I made fun of them because they couldn't leave. They was a boarding school. So
I know they were.
I told them all the time.
Been in that gym many times.
Yeah, I gave them buckets though, Sheehan. But I don't see no problem with this. Anybody that has a problem with this ain't really never played sports. They like, and anybody that's a fan
I disagree
like
with you on that.
Them,
I disagree with you on that. If somebody has a problem with it, it's because they are massive Washington fans. That's a rival. And they don't want their own players building up the other fan base. I don't have a problem with people that might be upset about it. I'm not, because I think he's in context just answering a question. And by the way, part of it is his competitiveness, that he loves playing in that environment. He likes going in there and competing in that environment. But I don't have a problem with people that feel that way or feel differently than I do on this one. I don't. I get it. Like, there was a day, G, there was a day where if any of our players said anything nice about Cowboys fans, we'd have been upset.
Yeah, but you got to have enough wherewithal to know it's tongue-in-cheek. He loves them because they are real passionate, and he's a killer. So he's trying to shut them up. He's not saying
I got that part.
Like, man, we got to be more smarter than this. And any fan that's like Kevin Sheehan talking about, I wish he had shouted us out. Man, we got to win to do that. And like you said about Seattle fans, when I was a kid, Seattle fans wasn't like they is now. They wasn't like the 12th man. They got their 12th man from us. because we was winning the RFK type of 12 man. So I'm not really worried about it. It's tongue in cheek, and he's a competitor trying to shut them people up, man. Man,
right.
I see him.
What?
I love you, Sheehan.
Love you too.
Hey.
What? Did you have something else?
He got me twice.
Jesus. Come on, G. Just DM me. Anthony, DC. Big deal, not a big deal. What Jaden said about Eagles fans praising them.
We hitting the dog days like 6 months early, aren't we?
Well, I mean, the video just hit yesterday. What do you want me to do?
No,
want me to ignore it?
No,
literally, I had about 100 tweets with the link to the video and to the article. People care about it.
I'm just messing with you, but that's the point. Why the hell do they care about it? It's much ado about nothing. I mean, God, people are so damn sensitive today, boy. I swear. He was just answering the question.
I wish I had said, just for the hell of it, it's not my style to do this. I wish I had said, man, why'd you go and say that about that team? You gotta have more savvy than that. But I didn't feel that.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, Kevin. Let's be real about this. We, except for blips here and there, we've stunk for the last 30 some odd years.
I know.
I got it. Our fan base is probably on the bottom half of the league right now. So for anybody to take any contention with what he said, they just ignorant. They have no self-awareness of what's going on in today's environment.
Well, let me just say this.
To be shouted
hold
out.
Hold on for 1 second. I want to get this out. I think in context, you're 100% right. That's why I don't really have a big deal with what he said at all. But I think if he had offered it up out of context, I think I would have felt differently about it. Then I would have said, you know what? You got caught off guard. It's a question, yes or no. Eagles fans, first thing was it's a totally honest answer. It's authentic because, by the way, you're right. Their fan base is a lot better than ours. The environment's a lot better than ours. It's one of the best in the league. You played in one of the best in college football, the best in college football. But if the context had been talking about, fan bases around the NFL and he had gone off on Philadelphia's fan base in a positive way, I would have had a bigger issue. Still not a major issue, but I think in context, it's a nothing burger. Let me get to some other callers, Anthony. Go ahead, real quick.
The key phrase is beating them in their stadium.
Yeah,
he's paraphrasing what he said.
100%.
That's the key phrase.
Yep, agreed. Let's go. Let's see what Ian thinks. Ian, go ahead.
No, I'm going to agree with all the callers. I don't think this is a big deal in isolation, but I think this is, small issue number 4 or 5, if I'm keeping track. The bet with Malik Neighbors, the taking Tressway's number, the talking about Ayuk, this one. All of them in isolation is not a problem, but when you add them all up, and it's not like he's 21, he's 25. He's been in college for a long time. He's pretty mature. He's pretty well raised. We can talk about that later. There's some cracks in the foundation where not a bad answer. You're right. Your answer would have been better, but he just says stuff where I'm like, you don't need to say this. You don't need to say that about Ayuk. You don't need to say that about Malik Neighbors and put that on public display. Like, there's just some chinks or cracks in the armor that I see with him.
There aren't any for me. You don't always have to do it in aggregate. You don't always have to put it all together. These are isolated instances. He is doing PR as part of last week's, Super Bowl press row, radio row for, what was he promoting, Max? Xfinity? What was he promoting last week? Why was he out there?
Yeah, he was promoting Xfinity stuff. That's kind of what they mentioned towards the end of the interview.
So, to me, I view these as all one-offs. I'm not adding them all up and looking at them as this is an indication, all of them together. of something of a chink in the armor. I'm not saying that you can't look at it that way. I'm just telling you I'm not looking at it that way.
Yeah, but I also think your desire to be so right about Jaden has kind of blinded you a little bit. So
it's not a desire to be so right. I'm already right to a certain degree. I mean, he had the greatest season in the history of college football in pro football as a rookie. It's that I'm just a fan. That's true. I am a fan, and I like the way he plays, and I have a feeling he's going to have a lot of other seasons that looked like his first one. But I'm also kind of a fan of him in general because watching him throughout college, I think he handled himself the right way. And everybody that you talk to that knows him and is around him just says this is the real deal in terms of a person. So just kind of taking the word of others in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tommy would disagree a little bit on the expose he did about him at Arizona State, but I mean,
his mother
again,
at Arizona State.
I'm not saying any of these in isolation are an issue, but there are times where I'm like, he could just say something smoother, and he's mature enough that he should. That would be my conclusion about it.
All right. Fair enough. Thanks. Max, are we breaking right now?
We should.
Let's do that. Sorry that for those that I didn't get to. By the way, Mitch Tishler is going to join us next. I had my time slots wrong when I teased him for 11 a.m. Glad to catch up with Stanford Steve. He was outstanding as always. Mitch Tishler from Monumental next. All right, joining me right now, Mitch Tishler from the Beltway Football Podcast with JP Finley and with Monumental Sportsnet at Mitch_Tishler, TISCHLER on X. You know, I often, right before I have a guest on, I'll just scroll through their X account just to see if there's any, news that they've, broken or anything that they've, commented on. And I think I just realized why I like you and I like having you on. You tweeted over the weekend, quote, "It continues to impress me that games on scoreboards on ESPN.com update concurrently with their broadcast, while games on other networks are updated in actual real time, consistently quicker than the over-the-air product." It's this kind of minutia that, for whatever reason, interests me, and I know it interests you too, because I'm going to tell you right now, over the holidays when my boys were home, we were watching some games or whatever, and I literally, had my phone. I forget what game it was. There was a game on. It may have been Thanksgiving weekend in college games or whatever, and I immediately just said, "This is going to be a 60-yard touchdown." And they're like, "How do you know?" And I'm like, "Look at the way the defense is aligned. The quarterback sees it, and boom, 60-yard touchdown," because it popped up on my phone before TV because it was in real time, and TV's a little bit behind. Although you say ESPN and ESPN.com and the game update concurrently. That's one hell of an observation, Mitch. Good job.
Thank you. I feel like ESPN tries to push people to watch the game on the TV as opposed to staring at a screen waiting for an update. But they're certainly happy to one up all the other networks when they're running their live programming.
There are times when I, let's just say, have an interest in a game that may not be on TV, and I don't have the NBA League Pass. And so it's possible that I am watching on a phone the play-by-play late in a game. Here's what drives me nuts about ESPN.com. I bet it's something you've noticed. The actual scoreboard, the score,
exactly
updates
where you're going
before the play-by-play.
Right. Kevin, you and I are very similar in that. I love kind of a lot of the small college basketball games. Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll cover up the scoreboard portion
exactly
and wait for the play-by-play to update.
It's so stupid, but I'm like, why do you give this? Let me just, so people know what we're talking about. If you're following a game on your phone on ESPN.com and you're actually interested in, the actual plays and the play-by-play, and you're watching the play-by-play and the score get updated on the play-by-play, but on the screen is the big scoreboard with just, say, Clippers versus Nuggets as an example. Well, the scoreboard updates, let's just say it's 105 to 105 with 2 minutes to go. You'll see it flip to Nuggets 107, Clippers 105 before the play-by-play comes up. So then you're like, it's kind of a letdown. It's like I wanted to see what the next play-by-play thing was going to provide me. And then it's like 30 seconds later, you get Jokic scored on a tip-in, 107, 105. But then the scoreboard's already updated again. Yeah, I hate that. They should fix that.
Yeah, I've actually started I'll just go to the home radio broadcast, and I won't have ESPN on at all, and I'll just listen to the radio broadcast when it gets down to crunch time in a game that I may have a rooting interest in outside of who wins and loses the game.
Well, the other thing too is on Sirius XM, if you're listening to the play-by-play of a game, the score updates on your screen 9 times out of 10. The actual play-by-play is sometimes at least a minute behind the scoreboard on your screen, and it's kind of hard not to look at the screen while you're driving. Or glance over at it occasionally. But anyway, these are things only weirdos like the two of us care about. Although, it is interesting about the international schedule that we now have, because we're now down to, correct me if I'm wrong, for Washington's host game internationally, because we now have the 49ers playing in Mexico City, the 49ers and the Rams playing in Melbourne, which we knew two West Coast teams would have to play that game. We got the Saints hosting the game in Paris. I'm forgetting what the other one is, but I think we're down to Washington will host a game, meaning one of their home games, in either London, one of the three games in London, Munich, or Madrid. I would assume they're not going back to Madrid. Do I have that right?
Yeah, the Jags have the game at Wembley. So the two games at Tottenham, the game in Munich, and the game in Madrid are the four that they haven't announced the host teams yet.
So what's your guess? Where are we playing internationally next year?
I mean, I think a lot of folks have heard some of the same rumblings I have from different places that they're going to be in London for one of the Tottenham games to host. And then the rumblings that I've heard, and they're just rumblings, so certainly not reporting anything, is that potentially they might stay in London for the week and then play the Jags, who they do play on the road this season, in Wembley as well. So I think they'll be in London most likely, and it sounds like they may have a back-to-backer out there, not so different than what the Vikings did last season when they played in Ireland and then went and played at Wembley Stadium.
Yeah, but remember the two games that they played against the Steelers and the Browns, Dublin against the Steelers, then London against the Browns. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both of those were road games for them, scheduled road games. And they had, now some people suggested that it's a disadvantage to have to be over there for basically 2.5 weeks, but I think it's an advantage to get rid of two true road games.
Yes, they're two true road games, absolutely. And as we talk about it in a Commander's specific way, we know that Dan Quinn loves those brotherhood trips. We saw that in year one when they flew out from Cincinnati to Arizona, spent the week in Arizona before they played the Cardinals. The schedule didn't quite allow for it last year. It didn't end up happening. So, for the NFL to do something along those lines, I would think that they clear that with the team, or they at least get input from the team on that. And to me, it makes, when I think about Dan Quinn brotherhood trips and the opportunity to kind of get away from it all, plus not have to go through the time-changing scenarios that happen when these teams go play internationally, I could see and make a lot of sense for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I just confirmed. I mean, Minnesota played those back-to-back weeks internationally last year. They played that game in Dublin against Pittsburgh. The next week they played in London against Cleveland, and both of those games were road games, which were neutral site environments. And Minnesota's fan base travels pretty well, so the game against Cleveland was almost like a home game. Personally, I think the benefit of not having to play two road games, by the way, at Pittsburgh, being one of them, and at Cleveland, not a terrible, I guess last year it may have been a road environment, but that's an advantage that teams shouldn't get. All right, let's talk first about what's upcoming, and that is free agency, less than a month away. Before we get there, there's going to be some activity here, right? There's going to be a couple of releases. We all agree that Marshawn Lattimore is going to get released. Probably Nick Allegretti, or there's a chance because there's a meaningful savings with him. I forget if you've weighed in on this with me, but what is your view on Daron Payne? Ben reported about 2 weeks ago that it's more likely than not he comes back and plays on his current deal, the final year of the deal, the $28 million cap hit. What do you think happens with Daron?
Yeah, I think he comes back and he plays on that final year. I think, folks get really caught up in needing to re-sign players. And I think we've seen over the years in Washington them miss true opportunities to re-sign somebody that they think they're going to have long-term. But I think with Durante Jones coming in and the defense changing, I think it begs the question of, will Daron fit / how will Daron fit? And you know what? Make the guy go play on the final year of his contract. Make him play like a star if he wants to get, paid on his next deal, and take advantage of having him. And now, granted, it's a pretty steep cap hit for the production that we've seen from Daron. But at the same time, this team has, even before any sort of restructure or anything happened with Daron Payne, if they did re-sign him, they're going to have, around $90 million in free agency to spend, which is, a boatload of money. And they have a ton of spots that they need to fill. So I think that you don't want to move on. To me, I don't want to move on from him because it just creates another opening on that defense that you have to address. And if we get a Deron Payne, contract year boom, that's great for the team. That means that the defense is playing better. He's going to put up numbers, and I think it's good across the board. And then Deron can go explore free agency and figure out what's next for him, whether it's stay in Washington for a new deal or go somewhere else.
If their base defense, which they'll be in 25% of the time, but if it is a 3-4, who do you think the nose tackle is?
I think Javon Kinlaw is going to be a super interesting guy there. If that base looks as a 3-4, I think one of the guys that could help the most is Johnny Newton, because if we get Johnny lining up more as a defensive endish type player, we've seen him, be pretty good at getting after the quarterback and struggle a little bit against the run. And I think inside he's asked to do a lot more of that run stopping, bottling up. If he's moved a little further to the edge, I think that could be a good spot for him. But I think your Javon Kinlaw seems to make a lot of sense for that role. And certainly when you look at some of the defenses and coaches that Durante Jones has worked with, he likes players like Javon Kinlaw, the size, the length, the strength, but also a little bit of that quickness. I think we saw this team sign so many players who were oriented to stopping the run last offseason. I think we're going to see a correction here, and there's going to be a lot more get after the quarterback type players and, edge rushers and guys who can kind of disrupt a defense in different ways in an aggressive manner.
Of the 29 unrestricted free agents, the 3 restricted free agents, let's just say that, without worrying about the money, that, they're available for a fair price. Who do you want back more than anybody else? It can be more than one player.
I mean, if we're talking a fair price, Chris Paul is pretty high up the list for me. But I think it depends on what that number looks like. I've been comparing Chris Paul almost to De'Ami Brown, last offseason, where he really had an uptick of the season. And I would have loved to have had De'Ami Brown last season back in Washington, but not at $10 million. I really want Chris Paul back in Washington. Again, not at $8, $9, $10 million. If it's closer to the 5-6 number, I'm more open to that move. But I think keeping that continuity on the offensive line would be really big. And Chris was quite frankly, pretty impressive in terms of what he did. On the defensive side of the ball, I think I would say Jacob Martin, which maybe sounds crazy considering
I don't think it's crazy.
What's that?
I don't think it's crazy.
Yeah, I just, based on kind of what the expectations were for him coming in last offseason, I don't want him to be my, starting edge rusher. I don't want him to be a guy that I am expecting, double-digit sacks from. But I think he's a great depth piece and rotational piece that you can add to a defense. And I think he showed out last year, and that's what you want, is guys to show what they can do and reward them for doing it. So I think I'd go Jacob Martin defense.
How do you feel about Marcus Mariota's, or assess the chances he comes back?
Yeah,
with no Cliff.
Yeah, I would say it's probably around 50-50 at best. Certainly Cliff isn't there, which is a part of it. But I think Mariota might have a chance to go start elsewhere, or at least compete for a starting job elsewhere. And for Marcus, he's a football player. He wants to be on the field. As much as he was a great soldier the past couple of years, he knew that he was only playing if Jaden Daniels got hurt. Next season he's only playing if Jaden Daniels isn't on the field. So as a competitor, I feel like he might want to go elsewhere. I think Cleveland would be a super interesting spot for him. He could certainly go compete with the group of young quarterbacks that are there. And he, for Cleveland, he'd be a great, mentor leader, guy who could help bring along 2 young quarterbacks and they can figure out their mess over there and what's going to make sense. But ultimately, Marcus and Jaden, we know, are tight. He knows David Blau extremely well. They work together extremely closely. They have a good relationship as well. I could see him wanting to come back here because it's a very good situation in the room, but he's also a competitor and probably wants to get out on the field. So solid 50-50. If I gun to my head, I would say he's gone next year.
All right, we're talking to Mitch Tishler from Monumental and the Beltway Pod with JP Finley. Let's talk about like a month from now, less than a month from now. First of all, do you agree with, Ian Rappaport that there are going to be fireworks, that this is going to be a very active free agency? And by fireworks, I'll just say it, a big spend in, whether it's volume or big name players. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I hate that he used that word fireworks just because it's going to fire up the fan base and create that's not a fireworks signing. That is a fireworks signing debate going on. But this team has a lot of money. They have a lot of holes to fill. I expect them to be very aggressive. And to me, I think that you look at free agency and how that will affect the draft. So I think for the front office group, I think you need to weigh kind of what you can do with the limited, top tier picks that you have in terms of the draft and figure out kind of where you need to backfill from there. I think that there's a couple of kind of young-ish edge rushers who are just coming off their rookie deals who are available out there that, are going to not be cheap. But I'd like to see this team start, lining up some guys and getting them from ages 26 to 30, some little bit longer term deals, not the short term rentals that we've seen, because ultimately I think that can help kind of build up this depth as you get guys for multiple years in a row. A couple of those names I'm looking at are Boye Mafe and Clevon Chason from New England last year.
Yep.
Mafe was in Seattle. I think Mafe is poised to break out double-digit sack edge rusher. It looks like he's going to be in the 15-ish 12 to 15-ish million a year, maybe a little bit more amount. And for me, if I think that a guy is going to be able to get up to a double-digit sack type number, that's money I'm obviously willing to spend hand over fist. And I think because of the strength of the edge rusher free agency market, obviously that would affect what ends up happening in April at the draft. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, and I look at Adam Peters in his front office, I want them to, kind of identify who their big target is and get them. There's not many teams out there that are going to be able to outspend them, obviously, to a reasonable level. But if it's the matter of a couple mil one way or the other, I want to see them kind of go all in on bringing in younger free agents and starting to actually build this thing as they've talked about for the long term, as opposed to, trying to kind of take a short step towards immediate success.
What about some names on offense?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of names at the top of the tight end list that I think, folks are going to get very excited about. I think we're going to be looking at a tight end, at least a running back, maybe two, and wide receiver as the main focuses there. And, obviously you're going to hear so much about Kyle Pitts and folks, and Isaiah Likely. A local kid that I loved coming out of the draft. I loved him in Maryland is Chigakonkwo.
Me too.
Who I think
I love him. I love him, and he hasn't had a quarterback. I think he's the guy that I've said since the end of the season. I think that, by the way, cheaper than Likely, and Pitts is going to get franchised, I think, maybe. I don't know, but I love Okonkwo. I think he can play.
Yeah, I think he can play. He's young. He's athletic. He's big. He's fast. He's all the things that this tight end room, specifically in Washington, are missing. And I think he's going to be, at least when you look at the top end tight ends, he's going to be a high value, lower budget type pick. Wide receiver. So as I start talking about the free agency world and how it affects the draft, I started working on a theory. I'm not quite there yet, but that maybe they fill out most of the defensive needs in free agency and end up going, a Carnell Tate way potentially once we get to the draft. Because as a whole, when you look at free agent wide receivers, when they sign in new places, they don't always put up huge numbers. I mean, I looked at the stat the other day. Since 2016, so the last 9 years, 48 wide receivers signed in free agency. Only 6 of them got to 1,000 yards in their first season with their new team. 2/3 of them didn't get to 700 yards, and only a third of them got to 2/3 of them didn't get to 700 yards, and 50% of them didn't get to 500 yards. So to sign a receiver and expect that they're going to come in and be a major contributor, I think is a little bit of the fantasy football world flipping into real life football. And so when I look at names like, Tyreek Hill, Alec Pierce, that group, I don't want to spend at the top end of that list. I mentioned him earlier, and I think it's the perfect situation. Go get De'Ami Brown, not as your, not that he's going to be your, set in stone number 2 receiver out there, but he's a guy that can stretch a defense. You're going to get him on pennies of the dollar, considering what he got last season. We've seen him be successful with Jaden. We know their connection. I think that would be super interesting. I think Juwan Jennings, a player like him, would be interesting again, starting to kind of go down from the top of the list there. Where I'm at is I want to spend big time money on the defensive side of the ball, take my big shots there and try and find, high upside players that you can get for multiple seasons on the offensive side of the ball that aren't necessarily the big splashy names, the fireworks names that fans may want.
I like what you said about the receivers because it makes sense to me intuitively as I just think about it. You did the work on it, or you're in the midst of doing the work. Like, I'm trying to think, like, in terms of absolute home run free agents. I think you said 6 have gone over 1,000 yards. I'm assuming Diggs is one of those guys recently, right?
Yeah, I gotta pull up the spreadsheet with the numbers and stuff on it. But
Devontae is one of those guys, although he was traded, right, to the Raiders. But whatever. That, for whatever reason, when you said that, it made sense to me, and so I'd actually look forward to seeing what that data shows. I also think that it'll be interesting because if they don't go, in free agency, if they don't go for another receiver that we would all look at as a true number 2, kind of a guy, it may be a clue as to what they're thinking about as it relates to the draft. My personal hope, Mitch, is that they really can solve a lot of their needs in free agency so that they can take the best player available at 7. I don't want them drafting for need, and I don't know that they would do that if they didn't address every need in free agency. But let's just get to the draft. Is there a player that you'd like to see land at 7 that you'd want them to take?
I think right now I'm at Bain. I think if I'm looking defensively, and Carnell Tate on the offensive side of the ball, I think are the 2 guys. That's kind of where I land. It's hard to really wrap my head around home run pick at 7 in the draft until we get through free agency and see what it kind of looks like, because there are teams that who are in a position to win right away that can maybe splurge on a luxury type pick and be super excited about that player. But this team is still, even if they sign the world in free agency, are still in a world where they have to build out a roster because you don't have your 22 starters, really planned out yet. So there's a lot of different options. You want to hear the list of receivers? I got it up real quick.
Yeah, please.
Stephon Diggs in 2025 in New England. Calvin Ridley in 24 in Tennessee. DeAndre Hopkins in 23 in Tennessee. Christian Kirk in 22 in Jacksonville. We got Robbie Anderson in 2020 in Carolina.
AKA Robbie Chosen.
You're right. And then you got John Brown in 2019 in Buffalo.
John Brown, who played what, Arizona?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. You know what? I had one more question. Is there a part of the team that you think is a sleeping need where most are focused on the obvious edge, corner, another playmaker, just everything on defense? But is there another need that isn't as obvious, you think, to most fans?
Yeah, I think we saw it in the play last year, but I would say linebacker, especially if we think they're going to be in a little bit more of a middle of the field heavy group, a 3-4 type. I mean, I love Jordan McGee, and I am so excited that it seems like he's finally going to get that opportunity. Also, obviously, Frankie Louvu, but you need one or two more guys out there, and I think you need one or two more starting level players without even going down the depth chart to fill out the rest of it. I think that, we talk so much about edge, and obviously in a 3-4, you have edge can be defensive end or a linebacker type player, but middle of the field guys, I think linebacker is a need both in the starting level and in the depth world.
Thanks for doing this as always. Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Mitch Tishler, everybody. Tank matchup tonight at Capital One. This is not the duel in the district. That's Saturday. Tonight, there's a duel for the bottom. We'll talk about that next. And then some of you who are just hanging out on social media may see some of the weather fear mongering going on about a potential massive snowstorm on Sunday night, and Monday. Doug Kammerer is going to join us at 12:40 to give us the latest and the truth. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Doug Kammerer, Channel 4, is going to jump on with us in 10 minutes. Will it snow this weekend or not? One model essentially just revealed what would be the biggest snowstorm in our city's history. But I will tell you that model's not a very good model. But it has gained some steam on social media. So Doug's going to jump on with us in about 10 minutes and give us the truth. So the Wizards tonight, in the first of 2 straight games on back-to-back nights at home against Indiana. Man, that must be a tough ticket to get for both of these games. These are 2 teams right now, standings-wise, that are in the bottom position. Sacramento's actually right now in position with the worst record in the NBA at 12-44. The Wizards have the second worst record in the NBA at 14-39. And then the Pacers, Nets, and Pelicans all have 15 wins. For the Wizards, I'm sure you know this by now, for them to retain their first-round pick in the upcoming 2026 draft, a draft that is loaded, they have to have a top 8 pick post-draft lottery to ensure that their pick doesn't drop below number 8. They have to finish with one of the 4 worst records in the NBA. Now, is it possible that they would still pick very high or in the top 8 if they didn't have one of the 4 worst records in the NBA? Of course, it's a draft lottery, but their best chance, their only chance to avoid something after 8 is to finish in the bottom 4. And so they play back-to-back games against another team that is in the same boat. And this is where right now the NBA has a bit of a problem. You know, you got 2 teams playing. Who on earth? I mean, look, season ticket holders, props, kudos for hanging in there, for sticking with it, and hopefully it'll pay off and you'll have the best seats in the house when they're contending here in a few years. But you can literally get into the building tonight, I think, for $6 if you want to, against Indiana in back-to-back games. Who's going to play on these 2 teams? Indiana's actually favored tonight, Max, in Washington by 2.5. I don't know who's going to play and who isn't. You probably won't know that until they get to tip-off. But this is a problem right now that Adam Silver wrestled with over All-Star Weekend publicly, talking about maybe the draft, significant changes to the draft, maybe even doing away with the draft so that tanking would go away if every team had the same chance lottery-wise at the end for draft order. I don't see that happening. The play-in sort of helped it a little bit, but look, now it's just openly tanking, and they're not going to put up with it. Mark Cuban the other day said in a very long tweet, he talked about the tanking being an issue that's been around for a while, and he thinks that the league should actually embrace tanking. He said the NBA's been misguided thinking that fans want to see their teams compete every night with a chance to win. It's never been that way. When I got into the NBA, they thought they were in the they thought they were in the basketball business. They aren't. They are in the business of creating experiences for fans. He thinks it should be more about the NBA's fan experience than who wins and who loses. And he writes, it should worry more about pricing fans out of games than tanking. So there are a couple of issues here. Number one is that the teams that are tanking are not pricing their fans out of the market unless you're a season ticket holder. And again, bless your hearts for hanging in there and having the belief in it, or just, wanting, you enjoy the product, whether you're a Cuban guy, you want to be entertained, you don't care if they win or lose. But these tanking teams, you can basically get into the arena to see these games for nothing, next to nothing. I mean, the incentives to get people to go to the games of the teams that are tanking, price is not that much of an issue. This is probably very, very old school and reflective of me being an older person at this point. But unless it's a sport that I don't care about and I just happen to go to a game or a team that I don't care about, and that happens occasionally. For me, it's hockey. I'm not a huge Caps fan, really, at all. But I enjoy going to a hockey game live, and I'll go to one or two a year, although I haven't been to one this year and didn't go to one last year. But I enjoy the night out. Baseball, even though I'm a big Nats fan, there are 81 of these things and 100 at home and 162 during the year. You know they're going to lose a lot of games. So the winning and losing isn't as important when I'm at the game. But man, for a football team or an NBA team, for me, the Wizards, I'm there to see them win. That's the priority. I'm not there to get entertained. I know that it's different for everybody. And a young family with young kids, you want to have that, area set up where the kids can go play. I don't get that. They can play somewhere else for a lot less and, not all the busyness and all the germs and the whole thing that probably are there in some, inside, play area. But I'm there to see my team win the game. I mean, somebody brought up the other day, why isn't this an issue anywhere else in the world? It's not an issue anywhere else in the world because they relegate teams that don't perform. That's the reason, or at least in soccer, but I think other sports, there's relegation. We don't have that in our country. We have leagues with teams, and teams have bought into being an NBA team, even if they don't play like one. It's not an easy solution to the tanking issue because I'll tell you what, a $500,000 fine of the Utah Jazz and a $100 fine of the Indiana Pacers in a year like this is just the cost of doing business. It's not going to deter them. They're going to try to get their best possible chance to end up with A.J. DeBonsa or, Darren Peterson, if you want him at this point. Because the only way to win big in this league is to have one of those 5, 6, 7 guys that are truly elite level superstars. You'll hear about this model that is showing not a little bit of snow, but the most ever on Sunday. Is it true or not? We'll talk to Doug Kammerer next. I kind of hate doing this, but this is right now kind of going around on social media. And you guys know how much I am into weather. And Doug Kammerer is into it and gets paid to do this, and he does it very well. And he's joining us right now, of course, NBC4's Doug Kammerer, at Doug Kammerer on X. You texted me during the show. I had not looked at what has turned out to be one of the all-time snowstorm model runs for our area that I can ever think of. I'll let you explain what the GFS showed us about an hour and a half ago, and then we can talk about the reality of this, which I know you're going to say it's not real, but we'll get into that in a moment. But this is, I've never seen this, in terms of a model run over our area. Have you?
Once or twice, yes. But this is very rare to see this. And it's so funny that you started this segment with, I hate to do this, because I was literally writing a Facebook post that I'm going to be posting here in a minute after I get done with this. And I started it by saying, I hate to do this. Because This is not something that we want to do. We don't want to have to talk about the difference in the models and why one model might be right, one model might not be good. And we don't want to talk about that normally, because we want there to be some model-to-model consistency. And normally there's at least some. There might be a variation of maybe one model is saying 6 to 10 and one is saying 3 to 6. And okay, you've got a little bit of a difference here in temperature. That's fine. But when you're talking about the difference between what we're seeing right now with the latest American model, the GFS, and the latest European model, it is simply incredible and really disappointing and disheartening. And there's a million other words that I could use to describe this, because the American model comes out and they've had a storm almost the entire time. It's been pretty consistent, showing some of the most snow for this storm on Sunday. Last night, 0Z run comes through, and I'll just say last night's run comes through, and it's a pretty good snowstorm. The 6Z run early this morning comes out, and it's even better snowstorm. And then the 12Z run comes out this morning, and it gives us literally 3 feet of snow.
Yeah,
3 feet of snow, and you look at a run like
37
that,
inches.
You go, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
37
Ground
inches
zero,
on a 10
the
to 1
DMV.
ratio. Exactly right. So literally, it literally shows the biggest storm of all time. The most we've ever gotten in D.C. is 28 inches. That was the 1922 Knickerbocker storm, 22, and 28 inches of snow. So this is putting out 8 inches more than our all-time record. Now, do I like to set records? Can we set records? Sure. We've done that. We saw what happened in 2009, 2010. That was incredible. But then you look at the European model, and it literally shows 0 to 3 inches. So the difference between the models is 3 feet is the difference between the models. And you just look at a model like this, and now I'm kind of going off here. You're looking at this, and you're going, this is the American model. This is what we as taxpayers are putting our money into. And it's a model that we cannot believe. We can't believe it, because there's no other models that are saying that. There's other models that are giving us a little bit more, giving us upwards of 6 inches or something, or something like that. The highest I've seen is like 6 to 8 inches on some of the other models. Right. But most of these are not developing this storm system on Sunday. They're not developing the storm system and keeping it close to the coast. But the GFS, the American model, is putting down a blizzard. And if you're in government, if you've got decision-making purposes, if you are in charge of decision-making and you see a storm like this, you have to go, full on into, I have to get things prepared, I have to get things ready. And then you look at the European, which is the voice of reason, and you go, oh, okay, maybe I don't have to get things ready. Right. And that's what we're dealing with right now.
And I actually think that, when I asked Doug to come on, I said, maybe you shouldn't, because people will think it's fear mongering. That's not what Doug's doing here. I think actually the more interesting conversation is, my God, what's happened to our weather forecasting technology? Why has this American model, the GFS, which has been a decent model over the years. Why has it now become a mid-major, basically? Although it's been really consistent on this particular storm for Sunday, because God forbid, this was what people used that Eisenhower had on D-Day. To get that, right, because there are important decisions that need to be made. So I think the conversation, the interesting part of this is, what do you guys do with this? Because this isn't how forecasting was done years ago. Now we've got all of these computer models that you guys rely on. Your expertise at times is determining which of these models make sense, which don't, and then nowcasting, which you're really good at.
Yes.
But the conversation is, what do you do with this? Like, how are you going to deal with this if when you go on the air at 4:15 today, this is what you have?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm actually going to talk about this. This is not something I normally do not like to put, and some other people do it on TV, and that's fine. I normally don't like to put different model runs. I don't like to put scenarios. I don't like to say, if this, then this. Here's the European model, here's the GFS. What's going to happen? Normally, it's something fairly in between. Sometimes you'll see the European come up towards the GFS. Other times, the GFS will move back towards the European. And that's going to be what happens eventually here. When does that happen? It's probably going to happen tomorrow. I was thinking it would happen today. And today, they're as far off as any two models have been, with one exception. I'll talk about that in a second. But it really is. That's why we are still needed. I look at this, and everybody asks us, hey, are you going to be needed in 5 years when it comes to AI and how AI modeling is catching up, and how AI is doing a really good job with some of our forecasts. And AI is doing great. I mean, you've got so many different AI models. The European has an AI model. The American model has an AI model. Google has an AI model, and the AIs are starting to do pretty good. And by the way, with this storm, they're giving us at maximum upwards of 6 inches. That's maximum. And that's the European AI. That's the American model AI. So they're not giving us a whole lot with this storm either. But we have not had good track record this winter. Our models have not done well. And it's not just the American model. The European hasn't done great either. But it's still number one. And it's still number one by far. Here's the example I was going to give you. And this one. Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy.
Yeah.
Sandy was, by the American model, predicted. Hurricane Sandy was one of the biggest hurricanes we've had on the Atlantic coast in a very long time. And it made an incredible directional change as it was moving out into the open waters of the Atlantic. It started moving back towards the coast. High pressure moved on top of it, and it moved directly into the coast in an unprecedented fashion, moving from east to west. Our storms normally go west to east. Right. Hurricane Sandy moved from east to west into Atlantic City, into New York City. The American model, the entire time, was saying that storm would stay out to sea. It was the European model that had it coming back to the coast. The European model crushed it. And that was when we first started to hear about the differences between the American model and the European model. And what's going on. And that's where we are now. We still have, unfortunately, this discrepancy between the models, and the European modeling agency is still much better than ours.
Do you think that the American model, the GFS, which hasn't been horrible forever, do you think it's gotten to the point where it's so bad that they might have to do something with it? Like, this kind of stuff that comes out today. By the way, let me back up. What's your gut tell you that it's going to be what on Sunday?
My gut has been telling me the whole time that this is not going to be a highly impactful storm. We're going to see we're going to see rain changing over to snow. Temperatures are going to be above freezing for most of the event. So that means our roads are going to be above freezing. So even when it changes over to snow, I don't think roads are going to be a very big issue at all. So I really think Monday morning, and I was just in the gym, and people were talking like, I'm just worried about Monday morning. What are we going to be dealing with? And normally I don't really chime in a whole lot because I just like to listen to when people talk about it. But I was like, hey, just want to let you know it's going to be fine. Monday morning is going to be good. Roads will be fine. Maybe we'll have some snow on grassy surfaces.
But I'm really not expecting much in the way of impacts from this storm.
So what are they going to do with the GFS, this American model that, again, for those that haven't caught on yet, is showing in their latest model run about an hour and a half ago, 3+ feet of snow on Sunday and Sunday night here in DC through Monday. I'm legitimately looking at it right now, an average of 36 inches around the immediate metro area. Doug says absolutely not going to happen. And this model has been a poor performer all year long. So what are they going to do with it?
So here's the latest European, by the way, just came in, and you and I were talking, saying that this would come in during our interview here.
Yeah.
The European model now has, get this, 1.9 inches of snow.
Yeah. So
we get
it's
1.9 inches of snow,
and 37.
It's 1.9 to 37. Yeah, literally a difference of nearly 3 feet. It's simply incredible. What are they going to do? Well, the GFS, the American model, actually did something about 2.5 years ago, where they tweaked the physics of the model. They tweaked the physics of the model to try to get it to be a better model because it was not doing good. Run-to-run consistency was not very good. And they fixed it. I won't say they fixed it. They tried to add to it. And it just didn't work. We just didn't see the improvements that we were hoping to see. And now we've been living with this model for, the better part of the last 2.5 years. So that's what we're dealing with right now. And here's another example of this. Hurricane Melissa devastated Jamaica this year. Just devastated that island nation. And the GFS, the American model, never had it hitting Jamaica. It was always off to the east. It was just a rainmaker for Jamaica, was not a direct hit. The European had it as a direct hit almost the entire time. So you look at another huge storm, which has huge implications on an island nation like Jamaica. And the American model is telling you, hey, it's going to be okay. We're just going to get a normal rainstorm here, and we don't really have to worry about it. Where the European is saying, hey, batten down the hatches. We need to move people into shelters, and we need to make sure that we're prepared for this thing. And that's exactly what actually ended up happening.
Good luck with this.
So what I'm expecting. Your question of where do we go from here? I don't know. I think after this storm, and after this winter, and after last year's hurricane season, there's definitely going to have to be some soul searching done by our modeling agencies. And I think we're going to have to figure out, where do we go from here? Is AI the answer? Because the AI American model.
What did the AI Euro show? Real quickly, just tell me, because I've got 30 seconds. What did the AI of the Euro show?
Yeah, that showed about 3 to 6 inches.
Okay, I actually trust that this winter more than the Euro op.
It's done okay. It hasn't done great, but it's done okay, and of course, it's better than the American model. So, so there you go.
All right.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for doing this. I got to run. We're at the end of the show, but I always love doing this with you. Good luck tonight in the weekend. I'm sure the 18Z will show nothing. That's probably the next GFS run. Thanks, Doug. Doug Kammerer, everybody. Thanks to him. Thanks to Mitch Tishler. Thanks to Stanford Steve. Done for the day. Chris Russell's next.